Hi everyone and welcome. You can see I've already got my glove on. I've already got the bin on the table, and the bin that we've got here on the table is a bin of European night crawlers, 46 days of age at this point, so somewhere between 6 and 7 weeks old. The last feeding that this bin received was feeding number 5, so this will be its 6th feeding. I am going to be going away on vacation in a few days, so I wanted to first inspect what the situation is in the bin and then bring the food downstairs from the freezer so that I can kind of size it appropriately before we just plop it in here, because I do want to put enough food in here that's probably going to last a good 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks. I do believe it'll be about 12 days when I finally get around to maybe getting back down into my wormery to work on stuff. But between now and 4 days from now, I'm going to be trying to get all my bins to that point where they're ready to withstand being without me for a good week and a half or so. And I know that in this case at least, it's going to be at least 12 days before I can get back to it after today's feeding. So I want to make sure that the feeding I apply to it today is sized appropriately. So let's bring the camera a little bit closer and see what's going on down here in this bin. So now it looks like the material right beneath where those sheets of paper and the cardboard covering were have a little bit of moisture to them, but not too much. It's pretty much dry leaves. But I'm sure you don't have to go very deep before you start to notice some nice damp castings. So now we would have fed right down the middle the last time, but to tell you the truth, I don't really remember what was fed or how much. So we'll try to just size up how many leftovers we've got remaining in here, and then add in just enough to make it seem like it'll be enough to last this bin a couple weeks. So I know that I've got a couple soiled used paper towels upstairs that are set aside. I've got a coffee filter with last night's coffee in it when I reset the coffee machine. So those are a couple of things that are already kind of baked into whatever we're going to be feeding today. But then I'll also go into the freezer to pluck out some good additional stuff to complement those stuff that I'm already definitely going to be including with today's feeding. So here and there I've definitely spotted a worm. You know, no mobs, just every now and then we're seeing one here or there. And since it was 9 days ago since we last fed, I'm curious if maybe the worms are still hanging out down near the feeding area. Maybe there's still some leftovers from the previous feeding. I don't know, look at this guy. Doesn't like me rummaging around in his private area. All right, dude, stay in the bin. I've been noticing that a lot lately. Usually I don't notice worms trying to squirm out of the bin when I'm tending to their needs. But more recently I've been seeing that happen a little bit here and there. Castings look really nice, and they're really nice and fluffy. Good moisture level to them too. Even though they're nice and damp, none of them seem like they're sticking together. They all seem nice and cool and cozy. And you can see there's worms hanging out in it. So there's certainly no issue out here on the sides. Out here on the sides is usually where I would expect the bin to start drying out a little bit, since it's the furthest away from where I'm adding the food items. Food items are typically basically the only moisture that gets added to the bin. In my bins usually, I mean in certain cases I do add water, but I typically try to limit the addition of moisture to the moisture content that's held within the foods that I'm feeding them. Okay, so I like the way things look over on that side. I guess we'll start shoving stuff over to maybe take a peek at how things look on the far side, on the other edge. I guess my main reason for usually wanting to inspect most of the bin, if not all of it, each time I'm in, is just to make sure that I'm kind of seeing consistent results throughout the bin. Nothing weird happening in any one particular section of the bin. Nothing unexpected. So over here too, all the material seems nice and fluffy, Got some nice moisture level to it. Here and there I could feel little chunks of food items. Stuff that seems like it's a little hard. I'm maybe cracking it open. Maybe a portion of a avocado pit or something. I don't know. It's hard to say. The material's all nice and fluffy. At this point I'm kind of also blending in some leaves, it seems, while I'm inspecting it. But yeah, everything looks really good. I don't mind blending in some of the leaves that are scattered across the top either when I'm kind of rummaging through, because I think it's kind of a nice thing to have a little bit of extra bedding sort of mixed into the material throughout, especially when it starts looking like it's mostly castings like we saw out on the two far edges. Alright, so really we're down to just checking out how the food is holding up from the last feeding. I already see one little piece of what was given to them last week, so I'm already starting to remember now. Part of what was given to them was chopped up corn cob. So I've been trying to help the corn cobs get more quickly consumed by kind of taking a corn cob and hacking it into little discs. So I saw this one down here already. And it always seems like the middle portion is what the worms are most interested in. This way you give them really easy access to the middle portion of it. This one doesn't have the middle portion hollowed out yet, but this one does. This one, not yet either. So, ooh, what's that? This over here, oh yeah, okay, now it's coming back to me. This is a whole mango. And it looks like there's quite a good amount of it remaining here. It's the sort of thing that you thought, you know, you would have thought that it would have driven the worms mad, that there'd be tons of worms swarming around that thing, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Perhaps it just hasn't really gotten to that point yet that the worms can really take advantage of it. So I guess my initial observation is that there are some leftovers in here. I already saw some corn cob bits. Here we've got a variety of different types of paper bits. This would be a coffee filter. All kinds of shredded newspaper. So I think between the mango, here's a mango seed, one that's probably been in here for some time now. And we don't even see the seed in this one yet. They haven't even eaten off the fleshy part of the fruit yet. Usually when you open one of these things up, you'll see a worm or two hanging out on the inside of it. It's kind of cool too how the husk sort of starts to unravel and it becomes this interesting kind of fibrous material. So I could see a bunch of worms hanging out down inside of here, but I don't want to bug them out. I'm just going to leave them be, but I could see a couple of them in there. So leftovers that we've seen so far, corn cob bits, which admittedly do usually take a little bit of time in any way, so I didn't really expect to see them gone this quickly. An entire mango, which I guess I was a little surprised to see so much of it remaining still. But not much of anything else, so maybe whatever it is that was added, because I'm sure there was other stuff added, maybe that's the stuff that I guess piqued their interest even better, and they did away with that first. So maybe the mango will just start getting some more attention in the coming days and weeks. So we've opened up the space in here pretty nicely. Room enough to bring down that coffee, those soiled paper towels that I've got, and maybe a couple handfuls of food to go along with that. So why don't I take a quick break here so I can shoot upstairs to the freezer and we'll get these guys a little chow. Here's what I ended up with. It's a whole lot of strawberry, frozen. It was in a plastic bag, so it's all kind of frozen together as it was in the plastic bag. Coffee, as you can see, as well as a little bit of bonus bedding coming in with the coffee filter. This is a nectarine, maybe? Plum, something? I don't know. Not plum. Something with the furry? I'm not sure what it is. A little peach. Yeah, what else do we got here? Cucumber. I think this is the end of an eggplant, maybe? I think my mom sent over some eggplant recently. And what else? This is like the butt end of a head of cauliflower, as well as one of the bases of one of the leaves of the cauliflower. And down here there's even a few chunks of the salad tomato, the tomato that was used in a salad. Maybe even some other stuff down lower, maybe not. That might be it. Oh, it looks like another little couple pieces of the corn made it in here. So you can see this is what I've been doing, is just cutting up the corn into little discs. That looks like the end piece. So now I've got those paper towels too. A whole bunch of extra bedding to go with this feeding. And I'll also be adding a little bit of this pulverized eggshell, which is the grit that I add to go with the feedings that I give my worms. And I've even got more leaves that I'm going to top everything off with. So between all this paper towel, the coffee filter, and the additional leaves that we're going to be covering up with at the end, we're going to be injecting this bin with another huge bonus round of more bedding. And that's just been the theme in my wormery lately, more and more bedding. And it seems like it's doing a really good job. It's kind of littering the material all over the place, but I think as a result it's helping it remain nice and airy and fluffy and easy to navigate through for the worms, and easy for it to remain well ventilated with air, oxygen. So we got a whole bunch of paper towel. Maybe we'll even just inject some of these leaves that have been here in this bin for who knows how long now. Some of them are probably just from the last feeding 9 days ago. And what I've been trying to do is I kind of sort of built a little schedule for myself in each of the remaining days between now and the time I go on vacation. Sort of schedule the feedings of my bins. And so the bin that we're feeding here was last fed 9 days ago. The one that I'm going to feed tomorrow, it will have been 9 days since that was last fed. Likewise on the bin that I'm feeding 3 days from now. And on that last day, on the 4th day, I think in that case that bin will have had its last feeding 8 days prior to that. So you know, trying to maximize all the bins that I'm feeding in terms of the time that has elapsed since the last feeding of the bin. So it's just so interesting to see so little movement on what you would think to be a pretty popular item in a worm bin. You know what? I'm even thinking a little extra bonus bedding right there on top of that mango, because then maybe they'll just come to nibble on the bedding. Maybe they're really more favoring the bedding as long as it's soaked with juices of the yummy fruits that they're getting. So maybe we'll even throw in a little bit more shredded paper when we get closer to the end. We'll just spread this stuff out here a little bit. I don't even know if I can break this thing up. This is like a pretty good sized chunk of strawberries. Oh, looks like they're coming apart pretty readily. Usually try to keep this other hand of mine pretty clean so I can manipulate the camera and stuff. So you know what? Perfect excuse to grab another handful of bedding, right? Wipe off my camera hand. And try to remind myself not to use that hand while I'm feeding or touching things that are going to be leaving a little residue. So I mean, right there, you would think to yourself, between those leftovers and those newly added food bits, that looks like a pretty good amount of food. And it does, I gotta admit, it sure does. But you know what? I'm giving them all this stuff right here. I really want this feeding to last very easily over the next 12 or more days. So I just got a funny feeling about some of these items, such as these strawberries. Just seem like the sort of thing that's just going to go 1, 2, 3 and be gone in no time. And then you know, some of these kind of slower breaking down items, the corn bits, for example, definitely a slow item. Something you would always expect to sort of still see in your worm bin a couple weeks after you put it in there. I guess depending on how aggressive your worms are. See, some people put these things into their, they put them in whole, and then the worms make their way right down into the middle of the darn thing and practically eat half of it in 1 week's time or whatever. So maybe I just don't have bins that are quite that heavily populated or quite that active. So I'm trying to think here. We did pretty good here in terms of loading this feeding area up with a whole bunch of food. A fair bit of bedding too so far. We're not even done yet. So before we kind of cover up there with that last little sheet of paper, the coffee filter, let's get in that grit, and then the last little sprinkling of fresh leaves across the top will help restore this nice kind of natural appearance to this bin. And I guess along the lines of trying to help it remain looking kind of natural, I'm Just taking anything that looks like a piece of paper or cardboard and just poking it down below the surface. I don't know why. It just seems like a nice thing to be able to have a bin that looks kind of earthy and natural, even though, you know, a huge portion of the stuff that you're using within it is definitely manufactured. Whatever. It's aesthetics. Just like to leave things the way I want to find them. Okay, nothing left after that other than a little dressing for the top. And it doesn't have to be much at this point. Just like kind of putting some fresh stuff down. This stuff probably wouldn't have much interest for the worms because it's just so fresh and kind of sterile. You gotta kind of think of the foods that you're adding fresh as sort of being semi-sterile. And certain foods, you know, certainly are capable of getting infiltrated pretty quickly by all the microorganisms that live in the bin, and, you know, get the breakdown process going really quick. Fruits and things like that, very liquidy type stuff. Certain things take a little bit longer and don't really get the attention of the worms until that's kicked in nicely. All right, let's try to keep all this stuff in the bin too. All the stuff sticking to my arm. Just got out of the shower. Gotta go get cleaned up again. That's not fun. I'm not going to keep you around for all the cleaning up and putting away. I'll take care of that once the camera's off. But before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your company. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to leave me a thumbs up if you think I deserved it. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider signing up to be a subscriber to the channel too. If you do, I would really appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.